slowly but certainly continuing with the class. This was really great. Thank you so much. It's nice to. This came to me today. It's like so beautiful to read this. It's like this is my guidance. I'm walking steadily on toward truth. Like, yeah, it's not a choice. It is happening. It is the only thing that's happening. So in this light of allowing that, of seeing that that is so, all this takes place that we're doing here. All that takes place for no other reason. And I'm sharing this, this is not because I say so, but because it is. You just read that. Like, and that is great to remember when being active in this class. What we do today, for instance, is looking at certain parts of yourself, or certain habits or certain patterns that you discover for yourself, but we don't discover this to discuss it with one another. Like, no, there's no use in doing that. No, I'm recognizing it and letting it go. I'm recognizing it and wanting it to be healed, wanting it to be undone. And that is taking place. So it's not even your doing in doing that. Yeah, no, I don't want to make it too technical in that sense, or too psychological. It is just that so I will share certain expressions or certain tendencies with you that you might recognize as, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I recognize that. So that's great. So you recognize it. For the rest, so to speak, you don't need to do anything with it. So that's why I want to be, careful in doing this, what we're doing, because the tendency of the human mind is to keep repeating the ideas that are bothering you, to keep repeating the patterns and the habits in order to maintain them more than anything, and not letting them go but maintaining them. So that's why we want to stay out of completely, since this is in fact part of our transformational process. So otherwise you get something like, there was a tendency, I don't know if it's still going on, like a tendency for course groups to meet and talk about things, talk about the lesson, or talking about forgiveness, instead of getting into the action of becoming willing to let go, as an action of mind. More than that, like, no, we don't want to get into discussing things and in fact keeping it here. Now, all of this is, and what we just experienced in the meditation too, you see, it's like when you start to read this with the purpose of knowing where you're going, you don't want to hold on to anything. It's like there's nothing. In fact, there's nothing of this world that I want. I find myself in it, and it appears to be real at times, but there's nothing that I want from it. There's nothing that I want from it. And that is not like a monk hiding yourself, isolating in order to be out of it. No, it is like, this is an experiment that we're doing. We're actually discovering that there's an alternative that's being offered continuously right next to the perception that we have. And so we want that. We want that alternative, because there's nothing here that we want according to our own ideas. So that's already enough psychology in that sense. It is not really psychology, but it's more like getting to know yourself in the tendencies that you have to stay in space and time because you think you have something to do there, or that you are needed in space and time, or more ideas that you can have. Like, we will meet many of them. which is perfectly all right to at least encounter and to take a look at, but not to maintain it. So, and this is like, yeah, that's great if you can say make that agreement with one another. It's like, we're not going to do that to keep each other here, so to speak. This is really transformative. It is a possibility to come out of where you find yourself, to become willing to receive the love of God in your consciousness on a daily basis, to see that when you forgive, that literally the power of God is flowing through you to do that. That's why it feels so good, and that's why it's so great to let go. Okay, so I made some statements. I wrote down some statements and tendencies or habits, or however you want to call them. And one of the list, there are two sections. So one of them is like the action of mind that you're actually doing. So what are you doing when you have a tendency to fall into a pattern, to numb yourself, to not feel what you're actually feeling, and all this, it's like all this that you have learned to adapt yourself to a space-time reference, space-time world, a space-time idea in your mind, like how can I call it? It's like anything that makes this world real. It's like, what have you done? Because you feel the pain of the place where you find yourself in space and time, and you did something with the pain in order not to completely feel it. Otherwise you would not be in this world. It's like otherwise you would literally be lifted out of it. But you found a way of, dealing with it, or coping, yeah, that's a word, coping with it in order to survive, to continue in this story of yourself. And so there might be some habits that you recognize as, oh yeah, that's actually something I do. So then what happens if you recognize it? That's okay, it's just self-reflection. We're not going to discuss it. It's self-reflection. You're suddenly, oh yeah, I recognize it. That's all that's necessary. So then I have another list of, I think, 5 tendencies or patterns, and you'll see that too. So this is where it's different. It's not an action of mind, but actually, yeah, something else. You'll see. And yeah, we go from there. So the first ones. So patterns and habits. I just made something out of it. So patterns and habits. An exercise. 5 tendencies. So here we go. I hope you can read it. What did you do? Say, in fact, what did you do to adjust to this place, to make it livable for you to be in space and time? So 5 tendencies that are very common. It's adjusting. One is adjusting. The second one is performing. It means like almost like acting. You perform. You do what is asked, and you comply. You sacrifice, in fact, your own authenticity in order to be part of it. Oh yes, sacrifice. See, that's another one. Sacrifice. Escape. Some way. Many varieties in that. Okay. So I go through them again. So 5 tendencies: adjusting, performing, sacrifice, escape. Okay, so these are just very common things that you recognize probably, and maybe you do all of them, who knows, or we're used to doing all of them. Like most of this is has to do with the fact that you're very sensitive in being present, because you're this sensitive personality, but this sensitive being in communication with everything in nature. Like in nature, the basic you, say the true you, is completely in communication with everything that is. So now, in this dream that it came, in this dream, in this world that it brought with itself, it adjusts itself to isolation or to separation, while it knows deep down inside that there is communication, that there is, that say everything is perfectly communicating. So the pain of not feeling that, the pain of not experiencing that temporarily is in fact unbearable. Like it's overwhelming. It is too much. So you will have to do certain things in order to cope with the place that you find yourself temporarily. Right? So you might recognize this when I share it like this. It's like you don't hear this every day this way, but in fact you came from heaven, like you came down from heaven. You took with you an idea of a world in which you can be separate, like you forgot to laugh and you took it serious. Now you're caught in it, you're being born in it. Suddenly you have an age, suddenly you have parents, suddenly you have a whole, human law to which to adhere. And that's not working. It's not working. Maybe right away you discovered that as a baby, maybe a little later as a child, maybe even after that, or maybe who knows when. But you start to come into, imagine, by the way, it's like imagine being born into a world where you suddenly have to breathe oxygen. Imagine that. Like, if that isn't a trauma, like an immense idea. Suddenly you start to breathe oxygen that's burning in your lungs. Like, this is how you got here. So something is fundamentally wrong in that idea, and you told from all the beginning, all the time, that it's normal, that it's the way it is. It is the world that you live in. It is. We're all doing that. Like the confirmation of that everyone is doing that. So you will have to change in order to adjust yourself to the place that you find yourself. Well, deep down, you know there's something else going on. Everyone knows it. Like, there's no place where you cannot have that memory of wholeness and purity, innocence and perfection. Everyone carries that idea, and it's like all the adjustments that you make in order to make it work, it brings incredible stress, because you find yourself in a place that is not yours, where you don't belong, and you try to adjust yourself to it as if you are part of it and are, say, literally an inhabitant of it. So that's pretty wild too. So these are very basic ideas that I'm sharing, but it's really fun to look at it this way, especially when you see yourself as being born in a body, walking around in space and time, in places where you cannot just be everywhere, but you have to be in a certain location. Well, I think for everyone that leads to incredible stress, because you want to be everywhere. When you think about something, you want to be there. When all these things that you dream of as a child, or maybe later too, like, there always seems to be a distance to be covered before you can get somewhere. It takes tremendous effort to travel around the world in order to go from A to B, or all these things. Like we adjusted ourselves to it, but it doesn't mean it's normal. Like, no, of course not. So you have different possibilities that you know of. That's why in the awakening, then suddenly discovering there's such thing as light communication is totally amazing. You see that you can actually directly communicate with one another. Suddenly you see that like minds are communicating. It is, you think, and suddenly somebody calls you, or all these things that you start to discover. So that's really lovely. But it's great to look at it this way, because of the fact that you have adjusted yourself to a place where you don't belong. And you call that normal, or you call that human. Yeah, that's just the way it is, that kind of thing. Nobody could tell you why that is that way. So here's that. In fact, here's that answer. So I love to share that, because it gives you a sense of freedom to see that you, in order to be yourself, you don't need to do these things. Like when you know that you're walking back home, so to speak, when you know there's only a way to God, like that is the only thing that is going on in this process that we find ourselves in, coming from this separation state, saying like, okay, none of this, I don't need any of this, I'm going back home. I hear a calling and I'm following that. I follow the guidance that God has given me, and see where I go. Like I'm led to that. So then, it doesn't mean anymore that you have to completely dissect the whole process that you were in a moment ago, or that you have to do deep psychotherapy or whatever to get to the bottom of your thinking in order to figure it out, how to take the next step. And all these things that we have also used to repair ourselves in this dream are also, not useful. Like it's not going to help us to get out of here. None of that. It was only made, in fact, to keep us here. It's like, that's pretty wild if you recognize that. That's pretty amazing. So all the ways of fixing the problems that we have used is all based on an idea to stay here and to get it solved here, while that will never succeed. So now, recognizing the tremendous speed up that is taking place by not having to do that, it can still be fun to take a look at certain aspects of it. And when I say it can be great fun, it can also help you to see, like, I'm just totally amazed by the thing that is actually occurring in me, in which I start to recognize my true nature and my process to come to the recognition of that. Even that I don't have to do, because it's already given to me. It was successful, and it did occur. Okay, so now the actions that I was talking about, the actions, finding yourself in this place, and what do you do? What are very common patterns and habits? So this is one of them. Overthinking. Then another one is this. Overreacting. Then another one is this. We were here. The other way. Well, wait. Yeah, overdoing. Oh yeah, oversleeping. That's another one. Oversleeping. I mean, taking a lot of time to sleep. More than actually is necessary. Overeating. Eating more than you have to. just to give yourself some sense of everything is comfortable and okay. So these were 5 tendencies: overeating, oversleeping, overdoing in whatever form, overthinking, overreacting. That's more like just to mention a few. That's just to mention a few. It's like in our transformational process, you get in touch with your own, say, way of thinking. So also with your own insanity in that sense. You see how you are, say, have tendencies to overreact or to overdo or to overeat or to, you discover all these things. And why am I saying this? Like, what is the value of that to you? Well, the recognition of the action, the recognition that you do that, and the reason why might not be connected to one another. Like, you might have heard, like, okay, if I do that, then I'm probably trying to fill up some emptiness inside of me. And I want to say it a little bit more extreme in that sense. It's like, now you're overreacting to a system, like a world and a place, because it is the place where you do not belong, where you don't don't feel connected to, never completely. There's always something missing there, because it is not really your true home. Like when there's such thing as fulfillment, you would not have any cravings to any of these things. The fulfillment would take place inside of you, and that would be it. That is completely nurturing. So in the transformational process, then it's, in fact, we go that way by taking time to rest more, not to overreact, to calm down our nervous system, if you want, to eat lightly before meditation, to say get up early in the morning to meditate, to break the patterns of long sleeping and just say staying in a kind of an comatose kind of state. It's like trying to not be here. So all these things you learn will shift and change in your transformational process. It can be that when you start reading one of the books, one of the inspiring books that you have, that you suddenly don't sleep at all at night because you're so touched by what you're hearing, or you're so excited about the light experience that you're having. So all that is changing and changing. So the great thing, I think, is this then, that the process is taking place. You are guided along this path. You get instruction on a moment-by-moment basis. There's nothing, hardly anything that you can do in order to facilitate this, except being willing to let these changes occur and to move through them in whatever form they are appearing to you. That is great to know that it works like that. Like, it's great to know. Also to find out that you can allow changes in your behavior, in your habits, in the way, in your patterns. You can allow changes because you feel that you have to do that. It's like, that is perfectly all right to have changes occur and see that is actually helpful to you. Like, nothing stays the same. It can look like that for some time, maybe for years, and then suddenly there's a shift because your consciousness changed again, like you made another shift into a whole different state altogether. Like, then you see that the confusion that takes place is just temporary, but it's like it's all in order to come to, say, it's all part of the plan, if you want, and also part of the journey to the goal that you have before you. like returning back home. So, and yeah, that's always great. It's like in a human relationship, you can encounter that too, with the idea of everything that you normally say with your words to somebody's close to you. You have a certain way of dealing with one another. At a certain point, a certain day, suddenly everything is like interpreted 180 degrees upside down. It does not work anymore. And everything you say to comfort and to bless, so to speak, is also misinterpreted. It seems like you're speaking a different language. So you might recognize that too in your awakening. I had this many times, I know that. It's like, I can't believe it. The words that I said yesterday, if I use them today again, they don't work. Like, they work average, like oil on the fire, instead of the other way around. And they were comforting before, now they increase great anxiety and incredible stress. And so, yeah, all these changes, you see that there's a perfect plan and it's working, and you're completely in it. So you go with it. You allow these changes to occur. You don't suppress them. You allow that to occur and see that it's actually beneficial to you, even though you were confused for some time and didn't know how to deal with it or how to look at it. So that's a part that I love to share with you. So I got some, what you call them, so whiteboards too that I want to use, but before that I want to share something else. This is just almost like we do this like almost like a relaxation. So it's totally different than you expect probably. So I'm using this actually as this, and that is habitats, like habits. Now I'm making habitats of it. So you see 6 habitats like places to be, or places to discover, or places to. So there must be one that is really attractive to you and other one not interesting at all, or something like that. Like maybe something is interesting to you about this, that you say like, oh yes, I love this because of So pick one of the 6, I would say. Pick one of the 6 that you really like. And you don't have to remember. Yeah, you will see it in the whiteboards too in a moment. Okay, so there's one more, and that is patterns. We're talking about patterns. Well, you might want to pick your favorite here too. Okay, so you picked one. Okay. Now you will see them in a moment when I pull up the whiteboards. I don't know why I can't remember the name. I want to share something else at this point. Okay, so I hope they went in a little deeper even, but they didn't. I thought it did. I wanted to go to the inner space of the molecules and atoms, but they did not. So I felt a bit closed in now by this reference. But anyway, so it was just a beautiful visual to come into, like, beyond the borders, beyond the boundaries that you're familiar with, and that's always great. Like to come into an idea of expansion is already a relief. Like, oh, look at that, it's so great. And between the space between the atoms, like, oh, that's so much space. So that's wonderful too. So it is never what it appears to be, that's for sure. And so now to bring some sense into our activities here, it's like it all comes together. I know that for sure. I just never know how. So bear with me, please. So here we get the whiteboards out, and this is the interactive part. And I put down attachment, like, yeah, it needs to be attached. It needs to be loved. It needs to feel the connection. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the next. There's more. There are 4 of them, I think. That's so great. So here, hey, look at this. Yeah, basic needs of a child. But now, what is the basic needs? What are the basic needs of you?